Governor Mills is calling a special meeting of the Maine Climate Council tomorrow. Communities around Maine are still working to rebuild from the impact of recent storms. As Maine faces more storms like this, officials want to meet and discuss rebuilding efforts and how the state can strengthen its resilience ahead of any future extreme weather events. This request comes after Mills formally requested that President Biden issue a major disaster declaration to help 10 Maine counties recover from December's storm.